الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be unto you. Welcome to Understanding Islam. My name is Ashraf Sheikh, and I'm the host for this program. Joining us, as usual, is our guest scholar, Dr. Parvez Ahmad. As you know, Dr. Ahmad is the chairman of the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, and that is the largest civil rights organization
for Muslims.
Thank you for that, Ahmad. I had a mental block. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
The topic for today's discussion is, to God belongs the East and the West. This is really a translation of the first part of a verse from the Quran, that is verse 115 in the second chapter of the Quran, which translates, to God belongs the East and the West. Wherever you turn, there is the presence of God. In this country, the three major faith traditions practiced are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. None of these faiths originated in this country, and consequently, they should not be looked at, or one faith tradition should not be looked at any more foreign than the other. In fact, there are just about as many Muslims as there are Jews in this country. Is that correct, Dr.
That's
Ahmad?
right.
Dr. Ahmad wrote a paper titled Changing Identities, Evolving Values, Is There Still a Transatlantic Community? And it was edited by Esther Brimmer and printed by Center for Transatlantic Relations, Johns Hopkins University. And we'd like to be referring to this paper every now and then, and that's the reason I felt the need that we should share the title with the audience. And Dr. Ahmad, you wrote that article. What is it that you had hoped to achieve?
Well, there is a great deal of misunderstanding in terms of what is the composition of Muslim minorities living in the West. And for a great many years, if not centuries, the dominant view has been that Muslims are cultural outsiders to the West. And that is really, it flies in the face of history, because Muslims have been in the West for many, many centuries. Even in America, Muslims have been here for many, many centuries. Many people mistakenly think that Muslims arrived in this country 30, 40, 50 years ago, and that's absolutely incorrect. There have been historical evidences showing Muslim presence here at least as old as the first slave ships that arrived in America. And there are even some evidences or historical writings which are slightly controversial, not completely accepted. Nonetheless, they do point to the possibility that Muslims may have arrived here even before Columbus. So given that there has been a very long tradition of Muslim presence in America, and not just in America, even in the West, Spain, Muslims ruled Spain for 700 years before the Inquisition drove Muslims and Jews out of Spain. So given that there has been such a long history, it is quite surprising and strange to be referred that Muslims are newcomers in this country or have just arrived or are outsiders to this country.
Let's talk about briefly the Muslim history in Spain, that there were people of various faith traditions that were there. And I realized throughout the Islamic empire in that era, there were people of various nationalities, ethnic origins, and what kind of relationship these people of different faith traditions, nationalities, ethnic origin had.
Historians refer to this period as la convivencia, which means that people were together. They were working together. They were living together, and it is recorded in history, in Islamic history, in Jewish history, as one of the most golden eras of shared learning. There were the three faith communities got along very well, and there were wonderful scientific and cultural and historic and literature expositions and philosophy and science and all of that bloomed. And it can be really very easily argued that the European Renaissance would not have been possible without the Muslim presence in Spain, because it was the Muslims who preserved some of the ancient Greek traditions by translating those traditions into Arabic. And they got retranslated back into the European languages from Arabic. Many of them got retranslated back into European languages through Arabic. So certainly there was a tremendous explosion of knowledge, you can say, during that period. Great scientific discoveries, great philosophical arguments were made, which is not very surprisingly when you have a multicultural society. There is always a greater chance of enriching debates, especially if in a multicultural society the societies live in harmony, the different communities within the society live in harmony, then there's always a better chance of very invigorating debates and exchange of ideas and cross-cultural exchanges that ultimately benefits not only that society but humanity as a whole. And Spain is a great historical example of that. Certainly the United States would be a current example of that.
That's right. Now, and give me a little background about this paper that I believe it was presented at the conference.
Yeah, there was a conference that Johns Hopkins had put together on transatlantic relations. And obviously many of the viewers may know that there is a large Muslim presence in Europe. The experiences of the Muslim community in Europe are slightly different from the experiences of the Muslim community in America, and they were interested in exploring that issue. There has been some negative incidents with the Muslim community in Europe, especially there was this huge riot in France, but that was not religiously oriented. But nonetheless, the Muslim community there or still live under very harsh condition. You can almost say they're disenfranchised as a community, and there was some rioting based on that social condition. And then, of course, the London bombing and all of these things that all obviously drew very negative attention to the minority community there. And within policy-making circles, there is a great deal of, you can say, interest in trying to understand what is the composition of the minority communities. There is a greater deal of kind of openness to engage with minority communities, and I think it was in that spirit that this conference was convened, and I presented the paper Western Muslim Minorities, Integration and Disenfranchisement. Because right now when you look at the Muslim minority communities in the West, you see some almost polar opposite experiences. For example, in very short, I can say that the Muslim community in America is highly integrated, but it is disenfranchised. It is not as enfranchised as